All right, guys, so I'm going to make you a video that explains our roofing process again, in case you had questions or anything like that. And if you have more questions, feel free to email or text me and I'll answer those for you. But just to give you kind of a brief rundown of how we do things. Now, we have 9 different steps that we follow whenever we come through and redo a roof. So, first one is what we've already done. We come out when we give you an estimate. But as we're doing that, we're also taking a ton of pictures and videos and notes for 2 reasons. One, we're documenting the size and the complexity of the roof. And we take all of these photos and videos and we put them in a file in something called Company Cam, and then we send this off to our crews. Now, the guy that runs my crew, Doug, he's been doing this for 25 plus years. He's really good at what he does, and he can take a look at those pictures or at those videos and say, hey, Wes, I think you missed this. Let's make sure that we order in this material, or let's make sure that we bring this tool to the roof. Point is that a smooth install for them is a quality roof for you. Most contractors cut corners when A, they're missing supplies, or B, they're running short on time. Taking a ton of pictures, a ton of videos, and sharing that with everyone that's going to be on the roof helps eliminate those 2 problems. And we're also doing this to make sure that we document any existing damage. Obviously, we don't want like our supply truck to come in, they drop a bunch of shingles, they scrape up the driveway, or we have a bundle of shingles that comes down off the roof and hits the gutter or something like that. This just helps us say, hey, this wasn't that way before, we'll cover it. The second step is job prep. This typically takes 1 to 2 weeks. And what we're doing here is we're selecting shingle colors, we're coordinating with the crews, we're ordering materials, and we're scheduling deliveries. We're also going to drop off a bunch of stuff at the front of the house. This is called the dry-in. So it consists of stuff like your underlayment and your ice and water and your drip edge and plywood as well. Typically, we'll drop these off the day before or the morning of. So it's not going to be in the driveway for forever, but just be aware that we typically like to set that there. Now, when the job actually begins, we usually start about 7:30 to 8 o'clock, but we're going to tear everything off down to the plywood. So all of the shingles, all of the flashing, all of the drip edge, all of the tar paper, all of the old ice and water, everything comes off. That's going to help prolong the lifespan of the roof. Leaving any component in there that isn't necessary is never a good thing. There's one exception to that, and that's any flashing that would be behind stuff like stucco or siding. If that's in good condition, we leave it, because otherwise we have to tear out all of the stucco, which creates a whole new mess that typically isn't worth it. So if this flashing is in good condition, it stays. Now, when we do the tear off, we tarp the whole property to help pick up any shingles, any crud that's coming off of the roof. And then we also run a magnet roller 3 times around the property. And what that does is it helps us pick up any nails. We do that at the end of every day, because the last thing I want is for you or kids or grandkids to walk outside, step on a nail, cut their foot, anything like that with a rusty roofing nail. So we're going to go through, we're going to run that magnet roller 3 times around the house at the end of every day. When I come and do my final inspection, I'm also going to make sure that everything is cleaned up. But the goal is to leave the job site clean at the end of every day. During this step, we also go through beforehand and we'll tarp any water features you might have around the house. So ponds, pools, fountains, anything like that, because fiberglass is notorious for clogging up filters in those. Now that brings us to step 4, which is where we'll inspect the old plywood. Now that we've torn the roof off down to the plywood, and we'll replace as necessary. When we do this, we'll go through and we take a bunch of pictures of everything that we've torn off, and then we take pictures of everything that we've put back on. Now, part of the reason that we do this is if you use our base package, we give you 6 sheets of plywood, which show up with every job. If we have to use more, it's $100 per sheet, and we typically call you beforehand and say, hey, I need 3 more sheets, 9 sheets total, it's $300 will be added to your bill. That way there's no surprise costs, and then you'll get pictures afterwards saying, showing how many we actually replaced, so that we didn't say we replaced 12 when in reality we only replaced 6. There's a lot of transparency in this process. This is also where we'll install something that's called a cricket, which is basically like a diverter that runs on the backside of a chimney. This is nice because this area is really prone to leaking, and this can help. And it is required by code if your chimney is any wider than 32 inches on the backside. Step 5 is where we'll take those materials that we dropped off the day before, the day of, and we do what we call a dry-in. So a lot of people wonder, like, hey, how do you keep a roof dry overnight without tarping it? And this is how. So during this step, we lay down 3 different things. We lay down what we call ice and water. This goes against any chimneys. It goes in any valleys. It goes along any eaves, and it goes along any roof to wall joints. It also goes along any plumbing penetrations or anything like that in the roof. It's also called leak barrier a lot of the time, or some people call it weather shield, but it's meant to help protect vulnerable parts of the roof from ice dams, from water leaking through your step flashing or something like that along your chimney, stuff like that. We'll also put down synthetic underlayment where the leak barrier isn't, and sometimes we'll run it over the top, like on this section right here. And then we also put in what we call drip edge. That's a little piece of flashing right there. All of that together constitutes the dry-in, which is basically like a big tarp laid over the roof. So your roof is safe from rain at this point. We obviously don't want to leave it out for forever because the sun will wear it down fairly quickly. But in the case of like a small rainstorm overnight, you're protected with this. So we never, ever, ever, ever leave a roof overnight without having completed this step beforehand. Step 6 is where we'll actually install the shingles on the roof. So the shingles are delivered by the supply company, and they use a special boom lift, ladder lift is sometimes what they'll call it, to put those up on the roof. When we start by installing something called a starter strip. Starter strip goes on the edge, every edge of the roof. And what this is this tar strip right here ties in with your first row of shingles and keeps your first row of shingles from blowing up in the wind. So that's how we can get like an unlimited wind warranty for you, or 160 mile per hour wind warranty for you. It's really only by using these starter strips. If we don't use these, or we use, like, some guys will use cut up shingles. Some guys won't use stuff at all. Sometimes when you do a second layer, when you do a second layer, most guys don't touch starter strip. That causes a lot of problems because that avoids a lot of manufacturer warranties by not doing this. So we need to make sure that we use proper starter strip and don't substitute it for a cheap replacement. After we've done that, we chalk lines and we shingle from bottom to top. Chalking lines helps keep everything straight in the roof and make it look nice. Here's just a couple pictures of roofs that we have shingled. This was a pretty fun one that we did down in South Weber. If you've opted into our Denali or Everest package, we'll use what we call granite hold fasteners, which is this thing right here. Now, all of these little rings or grooves in the nail add a significant amount of friction between the nail and the plywood that we nail the shingle down to, and it helps prevent what we call nail pops. And this is a good example of a nail pop. These happen as your roof expands and contracts in the cold. It's pretty normal to see those with a smooth shank roofing nail. And this is a silent killer. Unless you're getting up there every year and caulking these, you're going to deal with a lot of rotted plywood over time and a lot of leaks over time. So the granite hold fastener is designed to prevent this. We have to special order these guys in. If you choose to run with our base roof, we just do a smooth shank nail for you. This is also the time that we're going to go through and replace any of the flashings around, say, your furnace vent up here, maybe around any dryer vents. These were sun tubes is what they call these. And then we're also going to go through and lay a layer of roofing tar around the back side of it, just to give it a little bit of extra protection against any leaks. This is also the step where we'll go through and redo step flashing if needed. And this is also the step where we'll redo flashing around brick chimneys. So in this scenario right here, we've used two types of flashing. We've used this type of flashing right here on the chimney called step, but you can't see it because we actually need to lay in a second layer of flashing called counter flashing, which is what this black stuff is. And not only does it look nice, but it's critical for pushing water up over the top of this counter flashing. So we want to make sure that that chimney is flashed in correctly. Step 7 is where we'll actually install the ventilation and the ridge cap shingles on the roof. Now, before we start any project, we actually pull a roof report, and inside of that, there's a ventilation calculator. So for this roof, it kind of shows us a few things. It says, hey, if you're using ridge vent, the Cobra Ridge Runner, which is what we typically use, we need 52 feet of ridge vent. Or if you're using a box vent, so like this Masterflow SSB 960, you need 11 of those box vents. So it's pretty common to see underventilated roofs, especially those using box or what some people call turtle vents, and that will cause your roof to fail prematurely. Why? Because you get a lot more moisture, you get a lot more heat trapped up underneath the shingles, which can cause damage to plywood. And it can also cause your shingles to curl and crack prematurely. When we do the different types of ventilation, just so you know, our Denali or Everest package, this ridge vent is included automatically for you. If you do our base package, we include the box vents for you, giving you the option to upgrade to ridge vent if you'd like. One important note on these is whatever roofing company, whether it's us or someone else that you go with, make sure that they're running their ridge vent all the way down the ridge and to the very, very end. That creates a lot more of a uniform look. And what you'll see is a lot of companies, they'll run, because ridge vent comes on 30-foot rolls, say you had 67 feet of ridge, they'll run 30 feet and then they'll cut out 7 and then they'll run another 30 feet. So you have this weird gap in the middle. So make sure that they're running all the way, even if it requires them grabbing an extra roll of ridge vent. It just makes for a better looking roof. All right, final step. Step 8 is the final inspection. And this is where I typically come back. I will make sure the cleanup has happened properly, there's no damage, and that the roof is installed correctly. And I also grab a bunch of after pictures and add them to your file in Company Cam. Also allows me to finish any like small punch list items that we may have talked about, like repairing a piece of fascia or some soffit or a gutter, anything like that. And then we'll settle up your balance. We'll register any necessary warranties. This is typically done in the office, and we'll send you confirmation within a few days. And this is also the step where we'll schedule your final inspection with your local jurisdiction. So that would be, for this one, this was Ogden City. Typically, there's a few different inspections required for your permit during the process. Your final inspection is the most important one, and that's when everything gets finalized. Other than that, that's it. We have a pretty solid process. If you have questions on it, let me know. I'm always happy to answer them for you. But we try and do a good job. We try and make sure that when we come out and do the roof for you, it doesn't matter how good of materials we use if we're not installing them correctly. So that's kind of a rundown for you. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions.